Hi, this is Mike from BandLab. In this video, we're going to look at how you can use layering, processing, and arrangement techniques to help your drops hit harder in BandLab. You can open this project yourself with the link in the video description, and if you find this guide useful, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be the first to know when new videos drop. Here we're starting out with the sketch I made earlier. If you're looking for a guide to starting your own track from scratch, check out our playlist of video tutorials. This sketch comprises of 2 string loops, a drum loop, and a bass instrument. The bass sound has a pleasant character, and the bass line works with the other elements, but it doesn't have much of an impact when it drops. There are many things we can try to make the drop hit harder, but the biggest issue here is that the bass part doesn't have much energy in the low end. We can solve this issue without replacing the bass line by layering it with a dedicated sub-bass track. I add a new virtual instrument track and set it to leads, G-Funk Sine. I set this track to -3 dB to balance it with the other elements. G-Funk Sine is a pure sine tone, which doesn't have any harmonics above the fundamental frequency. This makes it perfect for adding as a layer beneath bass sounds that aren't heavy enough in the low end. I duplicate the MIDI over from the bass track. To duplicate notes or clips in BandLab, hold Option on Mac or Alt on Windows and drag them over. This extra low end certainly helps the bass feel bigger, but the bass line is still quite staccato, which means the bass notes don't get to ring out for very long. If I go into the sub-bass track MIDI and extend the notes, the drop sounds much heavier, giving it a greater impact. When layering bass and sub-bass patches, you might find that the low end of the original bass tone sounds messy when the sub-bass is added. It's not so bad in this case, but let's try cleaning it up anyway. In the effects panel, I add a tone multi-filter to the bass track. Set it to high pass mode, and set the frequency to 100 Hz. Another thing we can do to help the drop hit is accent it with some percussion. I open BandLab's Sounds, select the One Shots tab, and enter Crash into the text search field. I drag Crash Vibe into the project so that it plays on the drop. I set its track to -18.5 dB. We can make the crash sound more subtle with some processing. I add a multi-filter again, set it to high pass mode, and this time set the frequency to 7,500 Hz. Let's try a touch of delay as well. I add a delay, filter echo plus effect, and turn the mix down to 20%. This helps smooth out the sound and make it a touch more atmospheric. As well as changing what happens on the drop, adjusting what happens before the drop can also affect how impactful it is. In BandLab's Sounds, I select the Loops tab, and this time search for Riser. I drag Speeding Riser into the project. I set this track to -8 dB. I then search for Tom Fill and drag Slow Idle Tom Fill 01 into the project so that it plays just before the drop. I set this track to -3.5 dB. Another thing we can do to enhance the drop's impact is to remove more elements before it hits. I drag the right-hand edge of the string clips to the left so that they don't play for the last beat before the drop. This emphasizes the tom roll, and when the strings return, it makes the drop sound more impactful. Let's compare the original version of the drop with this new version. The original drop sounds extremely weak compared to the new version. The sub-bass helps the mix sound big, and the extra sounds and arrangement tweaks elevate it to the next level. Remember, you can fork this project and make your own version of it using the link in the video description. Have fun!